Welcome to Truth Be Found. Join us as we slip through the shadows and into the world of high-profile investigations with our host, professional investigator Justin Yentes, as he peels back the layers of the most perplexing cases, unmasking secrets to uncover the truth.
Folks, we have a different style show today. Today we are discussing an active investigation for an unsolved homicide out of Gilbert, Arizona. Our agency has taken this case on pro bono to assist the family to generate leads. At the end of the show, if you know anything about the murder of Rachel Hansen, which happened on June 4th, 2022, please, I beg you to go to the link in the show notes and submit your information. You can remain anonymous, but this mother that we're going to be interviewing here shortly needs your help. Thank you. All right, I want to welcome everyone today to Truth Be Found. As you might have guessed, we're diverting a little bit from our normal series of guests, and we've got Kim Hansen here with us today, the mother of Rachel Hansen, who was so tragically murdered about 2 years ago this month on June 2nd of 2022. Kim, I really want to thank you for coming on today and sharing Kim's story. Sharing Rachel's story and what your family has gone through. Kim, to start out, could you tell me a little bit about your family, your husband, and Rachel, and how
Sure.
how you guys have been in the last several years?
Yes, of course. Well, for many years, we were a foster adoptive family for about 18 years and took many children in, mostly under the age of 2, but a few little bit older ones, most of them drug exposed. And once they came, they didn't leave unless the state had a place for them to go. So we ended up adopting 9 altogether. And
You adopted 9,
yes.
not just fostered. You
Yes.
actually brought them. Wow.
Yes, we actually fostered about 100 kiddos over an 18-year period
Wow.
and adopted 9. And so Rachel was one of our last kiddos that came into our home, and that was in February of 2009. And she was 6 at the time and came into foster care kind of abruptly and ended up going to the crisis center in Phoenix for a short time, which she told me all about. She remembered very clearly being there for about 3 or 4 days until they could find what's called an emergency foster home.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went there for about 6 or 7 months. And initially the family planned to adopt her. They had 1 son and they planned to adopt Rachel as well. And then after a period of time, there was a little bit of conflict and they changed their minds. So that was yet in her young life another loss to her, because she had lost her birth mom. She came into care because the person that was caring for her died. She got off the bus from kindergarten and found him in the apartment. And so that was a loss. And then thinking this was going to be her forever family, and then having them change their minds was yet a third loss for her. So she did have a lot of early childhood trauma and was old enough when she came to verbalize a lot of it. She could talk about it a lot. And we just let her when she was ready. Different stories would come up. She would say different things. And she was just a feisty little thing because she had to care for herself a lot. And things like she would open the freezer and get out a can of frozen juice. And I would say, "Here, let me help you." And she'd say, "I can do it myself." And she just was very independent and had a mind of her own of how things should be done. And so she came in February of 2009, and because her case had already gone through the foster care process as far as declaring that birth dad was John Doe and birth mom was not to be found anywhere. She was legally already free for adoption. So we were able to move quickly, and she was adopted in May of 2009.
Okay.
So
And how old was she at that time?
she was 6 because then she turned 7 in June. Her birthday is June 12th.
Right.
Which is actually tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
She would be 22 tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've got listeners from, well, various parts of the country and some other countries. Could you explain? We live in somewhat of an agricultural community in Gilbert,
Right.
and I know I've been over to your neighborhood and whatnot. There's a lot of animals. There's a lot of horses. There's different livestock around. What was Rachel's involvement with the animals and the livestock in the area?
Well, when she first came was just at a time in our lives as our family that we had just sold and rehomed 4 horses that all of our older biological girls had ridden because they had all grown up and gone to college and getting married and that sort of thing. So we sold the horse trailer, rehomed and sold the horses. We were downsizing.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel would climb up on the horse fencing in the back and sit on the top just like this and say, I just wish we had a horse. I just wish we had a horse. And knowing her trauma that she'd been through, I said, we have to get this little girl a horse because that equine therapy, it's called, but actually just a little girl working with a horse is the best to help her heal and get through everything. So we jumped right back in and got her a horse, and she just was with that horse all the time. And it was just to start with an older horse that we didn't have to worry about so much. She could just sit on him, do whatever. And even though she was so little, she would climb up that fencing. She knew how to bring him over and park him right by the fence, and she would climb up and throw her leg over. And so at 6 years old, when
She was doing this at 6?
yes, and she was little. She was maybe only 5 foot or barely 5'1". She stood on her tippy toes. I mean, as an adult. But she started that as early as she could, and I would come down the stairs early in the morning in the summer at like 5:30 and look out our kitchen window, and she would just be laying on the back of a horse, just
Really?
hanging out. Yeah, she was way too little to saddle by herself, but she would just lay on the back and
Wow. She'd climb up there bareback
yeah.
at 6 years old.
yes,
That's-
yeah. Yes,
impressive.
that's where it started. And soon that wasn't quite enough horse. She wanted one that would walk more and do more. So a few years later, we got her another one, and beautiful Palomino, and she rode her, and we started doing like 4-H and all the like little gymkhanas, they're called, rodeos for small kids. And she just wanted to participate in everything and ride all the time. So she did that with her horse till tragically her horse just colicked, we think, and we lost her one morning, and that was devastating for Rachel. That was another loss in her life. But shortly after that, after we kind of worked through the grieving process, we started looking for another horse, and by that time she was ready for kind of like junior high rodeo kind of stuff. And so we found a wonderful horse named Jamocha that she rode well until she got Dash.
Jamocha?
Jamocha.
Okay.
Yes, and there's a wonderful picture of her riding Jamocha at out in Queen Creek at a parade with the 4-H group. And yeah, so we had Jamocha, and then when Jamocha got too old, so to speak, to be able to run as competitively in barrels as Rachel wanted to. Then I think she was 12 years old. We found, or maybe she was, I don't know, she was around 12 or 13. Bought Dash, the horse that we now have.
She was 12 or 13?
Uh-huh.
When you got Dash? Okay.
Yes. Kept Tomoka, had her, but also had Dash. Dash was only 4, so she wanted to start training her to run barrels. And that's the horse that we have now. That
Okay.
was Rachel's heart horse.
You still
dream
have,
horse.
you
Yes.
still have Dash with you?
Yeah. Yes, we do. And her baby. Because just in April, right before Rachel was killed, she had decided that she wanted, for the first time ever, to breed and have a little foal to raise from day one.
Okay.
So she had spent several months doing a lot of research on different stallions and who would produce the kind of little foal that she wanted to raise. And she picked a stallion and bred Dash. And so
So that's the
Yeah.
little foal that you've
Yeah.
got. What's
Yeah.
the foal's name?
Danny.
Danny? Okay.
She's named Danny after Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
I can explain quickly. D for Dash, mom. Rachel's middle name was Anne, Anne, and then Y for the stallion. So it's Danny, spelled that way. And yes, we have both of them.
Now, how did the equine therapy, did that help her overcome some of the trauma that she had as a child? And
Yes. Yes, I think it did. Because anytime that she would remember or be feeling down or have kind of flashbacks of different things, she would just get on her horse. When she was littler, it was just at the yard and ride around. But as soon, gosh, probably by the time she was 11 or 12, go out on the canal system just outside of our neighborhood and just run as far as she could, either direction, and down around Freestone Park. And she'd just run all around there. And that's how she really worked through a lot of what she'd been through. And it did really help. She could just release out on the canal.
okay. You've got now 9 adopted kids. Are they all older or younger than Rachel, or how did she fit into that mix?
Rachel was near the younger end because our oldest adopted kids are 26 now.
Okay.
So she was she has 2 younger brothers and 1 younger sister. So she was near the end.
Okay.
And some of them are still living at home.
Mm-hmm. And she had recently gotten engaged, correct?
Yes.
How did that? Tell me a little bit about that relationship and her fiance. And
She and Jomette had dated for almost a year. We didn't know about it for a while because that was just Rachel's style. She liked to just
surprise you.
well and make sure everything was good first. Yes. So we had known him for about 7 or 8 months when he would come over and help her unload bales of hay in the back and everything, work with the horses. And we just thought he was a great guy. We really liked him. We got to know him and spend more time with him. And in January of 22, he actually proposed to her. And in true Rachel fashion, she had chosen the engagement ring she wanted because it just had diamonds on it, nothing sticking up, no big stone sticking up that could be knocked off when she was working with horses.
Okay.
And so she was very excited and happy about that. And they had decided to wait until October or November of 2024. So that would be this year coming up.
That's when they were set to get married?
That's what they were planning.
Okay. And what, at some point in late 2021, she had moved out of your home and gone to work training horses full time. Is that correct?
Yes. 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 she, at first, well, she graduated from high school a year early. So she graduated when she was 16 and then turned 17 because she just was ready to start living life. She was very, very smart. She actually had a full scholarship
Wow.
to NAU, and we did all the normal parent things of, signing up for everything and putting the deposit for the dorm and all of that. And she was going to play soccer and wanted to be in the soccer dorm or close to the fields. And then right before, when it was way too late to get any of the deposits back or change anything, she just panicked and said, I can't go. She didn't want to be that far away from home. So, so we kind of regrouped and turned things around. She didn't go to NAU, and she wanted to start a business and start working, but yet be close to home. So her first couple of jobs were up north from us, like in Cave Creek, where she worked for big horse ranches, helping with the horses, riding them, exercising them every day, and lived up there on those properties and traveled with some of them and all of that. And she worked for a couple different ones and really enjoyed it. But then she wanted to be closer to home. And that is when she rented the apartment and started working more down in the East Valley. She'd lived in the apartment, but she worked for a couple different horse trainers in Queen Creek.
Okay. And for folks that aren't familiar with the area, Scottsdale, which is where we're at right now in our studio, but Cave Creek is just north of here. It's a pretty agricultural based community. There's a lot of horses, I should say. I mean, there's a lot of big homes and expensive properties and whatnot, but there's a lot of horse owners and a lot of horse property. Same in the East Valley, in Gilbert, Queen Creek, Santan Valley, and that's all in the southeast part of Phoenix.
Right.
Where it surprises me how much of a horse community is out here, because it is so hot. I'm surprised the horses don't complain. Although
They do get warm. This is the hard season, the hard couple months. And we just have to really do a lot to keep them cool with misters and hosing them down during the day and lots of cool, fresh water. But the rest of the year is so beautiful.
Right.
For horses. That's why you don't have to deal with the cold and snow and ice and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know my sister and brother-in-law are ranchers out in Nebraska, and they're always amazed when they come out here and they see our cattle eating cactus and whatnot.
Right.
They do a lot more that their cattle and horses don't have to deal with.
Different climate, that's
Right,
for sure.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what made her choose the apartment that she chose? Because she's over by, for those that don't know the area, this is in the heart of Gilbert, and folks should know that Gilbert's a very safe community. Have you been in the town for quite a while?
Yes, we have lived in Gilbert in our same home for 32 years.
Okay.
So a long time. We've watched it grow all around us. Yep.
And Gilbert has grown from a small cotton farming community to a very large town. We've got, I think now, about 280,000 people or so.
Right.
We're about to be completely filled with development, and so a lot of the farmland and the horse land have been turned into businesses and homes, and as urban sprawl grows. But we're a very safe community, generally speaking. We've been called the second safest community in the country. New York Times had us listed, I think just this week or last, as one of the top 10 places to raise a family. And so, did you have any trepidation or nervousness when she decided to move out and get her own place?
Not at all. Not at all, because we were just thankful that she was going to be closer to home, which is the number one reason she chose that apartment, because it's only 2.5, maybe 3 miles down the road from our home. And so we were just happy that she would be back. We felt like it's a very safe area, like you were saying. And we really didn't. We were just thankful knowing that it's a good area and a newer apartment complex, and she would be close.
Okay. Yeah, it is a great area. It's 2 or 3 miles from where my family and I live. There's generally not a lot going on. It's always been known as somewhat of a bedroom community, because a lot of folks would live and sleep there, but work in Phoenix or in some of the surrounding areas. It's
Right.
starting to change a little bit, but
Yeah.
but for a long time that's been the norm. Did she ever have any problems over at the complex before
No.
her time there?
No, she never did. She had a roommate for a short time, but it was only a 1-bedroom apartment, and she thought she would try having this girl live with her to, cut the rent in half. But only having 1 bedroom became a problem, and so that didn't last long. She just decided she liked her independence and wanted to have her apartment to herself, not someone else taking her space. So she never had any trouble. And as you mentioned, she was such an animal lover that I had different dogs from different rescues at the time that we would just foster and care for. And she often would take 1 or 2 of them home with her to the apartment. Just that was all she wanted for companionship, was to have, a dog or 2 with her. And then she would run from her apartment down Greenfield to home to exercise the dog and herself, because she loved doing that. And
That's what, 2, 3 miles
yeah,
away?
at least 3, I think. And then sometimes I would offer to drive her back to the apartment. She'd say, "No, that's fine. We're going to run back." And so it was close enough to do that.
Okay. Now, how long did she live in that apartment before she ended up moving out and subletting it? Because at some point she decided to take another job
Right.
in the horse
Right.
industry, is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yes. She had met some other folks that had a ranch out in Queen Creek that just sounded almost too good to be true. So she really, really wanted to take advantage of that offer and opportunity, and move out to the property. There was a casita there where she could live separate from the main house, and keep her horse there, have her dogs with her, and everything. So she began looking for someone to sublease her apartment against our will, because as parents we kept saying, "I don't think that's legal. Have you talked to the apartment complex?" And she said, "No, it's fine. That it'll be fine. I'll find somebody that can just stay here, live here, and pay rent while I'm living out at the ranch." So she did. She found somebody to sublease, and she moved out there the middle of December of 21.
Okay. And then how long, so what was it that brought her out to live at that, like on site at that place? Was she working there? Was she training horses or?
She was. The ranch was just getting established and buying horses and bringing them in. And I think what drew her to being there, wanting to be there, is she knew she could take Dash with her, live on the same property with her horse, and take care of her and ride her while also training horses for the other people.
Okay. And it was at this time when she had also decided to breed Dash.
No, it was about 6 months later, because
Okay.
Dash was not bred until the 1st of May of 22. But during that time, she lived on the property. She was very busy. At one point in January, I know they hauled a 6-horse trailer up to Montana and loaded 4 yearlings off a big ranch in Montana and brought them back. I was a little surprised, and as a mother, concerned, because of the weather, especially.
And Rachel went on this trip?
She drove.
Oh, wow.
Yes. She drove and drove back. it was her and one other person. But they made it back. They literally drove up in a day, spent the night there, loaded the yearlings in the morning, and drove back. So it was a very fast trip. But and then these little yearlings lived in a arena corral area right outside the casita where she was staying, so she could watch him and work with him every day, and was really happy about doing that. That was just kind of fulfilling something in her because of her passion for horses and animals, all animals.
So she had Dash plus the 4 yearlings, and were there other horses there that
There were
she
two,
was
yes,
charged with?
2 or 3
And
others. I was out there a couple times. She invited me and my mom, so her grandmother, out for lunch there, and was just so proud to show us all the horses and talk about them and what she was doing with them and how she was working with them, and then to make lunch and serve us.
Okay. And so during this time, then she's watching over the yearlings, helping to train and raise them. Were those being raised for sale or to barrel race, or what were they purposed for?
I am not 100% certain about that. Likely, my guess would be to sell, to get them where they could be under saddle and be ridden, and then maybe sell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you were mentioning at that point, towards April, May, she decided to breed Dash. And around that same time, she terminated her employment there, or her employment came to an end at that ranch. Is that
That was right at the very end of May. So it was after Dash was already bred, and it was maybe around May 25th or 6th. Like, it was at the very end of May. And yes, her employment was terminated. There was some disagreement about the training because the yearlings were not under saddle yet and were not supposed to be. And then there was another incident where she was loading a horse in a trailer, and it kind of spooked and kicked and broke her finger on her left hand. Not just broke it, but broke it where it had to be surgically put back together.
Rachel's hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she had pins in it for about 6 weeks to hold it in place and everything. And so she couldn't train during that time. And I think that kind of became an issue. The surgeon told her she couldn't train, but yet she still was doing some, because she would come home and everything was covered with, all the bandages were covered with dust and dirt. And, of course, as her mom, I was saying, your finger is more important. You need to listen to what the surgeon has told you so you don't damage it more. And she would say, but I can't. They need attention. I have to do this and that. So she still was in the barn more than she should have been during that time.
Right. Now, she had made an arrangement with another stallion owner to have their horses mate, and explain to me how there became a disagreement over the breeding of the horses.
I think that I don't know about that. There was one thing that she did for her business was she brokered horses, I guess. People wanting to buy certain horses, people trying to sell their horses. And so she worked that connection between people and would find some horses, and then she would sell some. And I think there was a disagreement in a horse trade or deal that was made that I think that was the disagreement, where it was really nice quarter horse was to be sold for a gelding, and then another mare with a foal. And there was some discrepancy in what happened in that trade. Apparently the mare and foal never were delivered to the property, and I think that's where the problem arose.
Okay. And at this same time, where there is a discrepancy over the horse trading, and she's got her damaged finger, so she's not able to do her job, and so she ends up moving back to the apartment.
Yes. When she was let go from her employment at the ranch, she let the people that were subleasing the apartment know that they would have to move out in the next few days because she needed to move back in. And so they did. They got all of their belongings packed up and moved out. In the meantime, all of Rachel's possessions were in our garage because she was told by the employers she needed to have everything out by May 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And so her dad and brothers and her fiance all went out there and all in one day packed up all of her belongings and all the furniture and everything on a large trailer, brought it back and parked it in our driveway. And then my husband hooked up the horse trailer to go back out and pick up Dash. So she was also off the property.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where some of the conflict began.
So this is on May 31st,
Yes.
when Todd goes out to the property
Yes.
with the horse trailer to pick up Dash.
Yes. Well, he doesn't even make it there. As he's driving there, it's about a 30-minute drive. He texts the people and said, "We've unloaded the trailer. All of Rachel's belongings are out of the casita. And I now have the horse trailer and I'm headed out to load Dash up to have her off your property as well, per your request."
Mm-hmm.
And he received a text back that said, "The horse has been removed from our property, and this is the name and number of our attorney." And that is all we knew at the time.
Okay. So was Dash on the property that morning?
Yes.
So during the time between loading up all of Rachel's belongings from the property, from the casita, driving from Queen Creek to Gilbert, unloading it there, Dash is somehow removed
Yes.
and taken to where?
Unknown location. We never knew where she was.
Now, to this day, do you know where Dash was taken for those
No.
several hours or at that time?
No.
Okay. Did you or Rachel think that was odd? Was this out of the blue, or was
Very
it sounds like it wasn't expected.
No, not at all. It was absolutely unexpected because we were asked to get everything off, including the horse. And that's why it just happened very, very suddenly. And as soon as Rachel learned of that, she just, as you can imagine, was very upset. And she posted that her horse had been stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Though I guess I felt like it was being held for ransom, but the way she worded it, she said stolen. And
Semantics.
yes, yes,
It's either a theft, it's a taking, it's a
yeah, wrong.
lot of ways to describe it.
Either
But
way, yeah,
at the end of the day, she owned Dash.
yes, absolutely, own Dash. And so she was hysterical
Mm-hmm.
to find her. And as she learned more about why her horse was taken, she immediately started posting on social media, trying to sell her saddles, anything she could to get the ransom money to be able to get Dash back.
Okay.
She was absolutely frantic about where Dash was because by this time she'd been bred. So it was her and the foal. And unfortunately, during this time, I was in Indiana babysitting two of our grandchildren. And so she would call me every half an hour, Mom, people are saying all this stuff on social media. It's blowing up on Facebook. Different people are taking pictures of different horses that look like Dash, but it's not her. Nobody knows where she is. She was absolutely frantic. And talking to her on the phone, I just was telling her, your dad's trying to figure out from his end. He's in communication with their attorney, and I will be home. I think I was supposed to come home on Monday. I said, I'll be home on Monday. Whatever it is, we'll pay the ransom. We'll do whatever we need to do. Don't panic. We will get Dash back, or we'll sort through this. And she was just hysterical.
And I've seen the contract that was signed between Rachel and the stallion owner, that I believe $950 was supposed to be paid to what they called a stud fee, and then also some veterinarian bills, and which were a couple $100. What was the additional amount that was requested?
The additional amount was for the other mare and foal that did not show up in the trade that was made, according to what we can figure out. To the best of our knowledge, that's what we think.
No, did this attorney that your husband was in contact with, did he provide any type of documentation on this other mystery horse and foal that were supposedly owed?
No documentation about it. Just conversation between them. No.
Okay. And how much did he request roughly to get Dash back?
Originally, it was $5,000 to make that deal. But then after a few days went by, then they added all the vet care and just started going up.
Okay. Do you remember roughly what it was all in?
$75.
$7,500. Okay. And this isn't money that did Rachel feel that she owed that money to these folks?
No, not at all. That she was planning to pay them back when they were certain that that it took and all that. She was going to pay them the stud fee and the care for the foal. But I guess that hadn't happened yet. And then all of a sudden she was terminated. So she was worried about her finances and catching up on all of that.
And an extra $5,000 to $7,000 was of invoices that she then got hit with. Those sounds like came out of nowhere.
Yes.
Or as a surprise to Rachel.
Yes.
At minimum.
Yes.
Okay. And I mean, unfortunately, did Rachel get reunited with Dash between that time and the time that she was killed?
No.
So this takes us to the end of May 31st of 2022. And Rachel has now been moved out of the casita, off of the ranch, and back into her apartment. The subletters that were living in her apartment, what did you know about them? Did you ever meet them, or
No.
in the move, were they around? I mean, I guess you were in Indiana, so.
No, I never met them. I only knew that she had found or made the connection on Facebook Marketplace. They had been living there. A young woman had been living there, and I didn't know during that spring period that living situation had deteriorated, I guess. I only found out later from other residents there that there was a lot of coming and going and a lot of marijuana smells and things like that. So a lot of the residents close by knew that there were some things going on there that shouldn't, but I didn't know about any of that until after.
Okay. In the apartment complex, it sounds like they didn't have any idea that this change in occupancy had occurred.
I don't believe so.
Okay. What about cameras in the complex or in the lobby, or is there
I don't honestly know the answer about in the common areas, but there are no cameras in the hallways or through the gates where cars come in and put in a gate code. There are no cameras.
There's nothing?
No.
Okay. Are there any cameras on the complex that you know of?
I don't believe so. There's some discrepancy there as well. The apartment complex says yes that there are, but different residents have stated that they've asked for cameras for years and they've never been installed.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay.
fully.
Okay. And so we're now at the beginning part of June of 2022. At what point did you come back from Indiana?
On Saturday, June 4th, when Rachel was killed, police officers came to our house at 6 in the morning and told my husband.
And he was there by himself?
Well, our boys were there. And so after he kind of collected himself, then he knew he needed to tell them right away. So that took a little bit. He spent a couple hours with them, getting them in a better place. As you can imagine, it was very dramatic. And then he called me about midday.
And so what was Rachel doing between moving back to the apartment and I guess through June 3rd? Was she working anywhere? Was she spending time with with your husband or her brothers or her fiance?
So she really literally had a nervous breakdown right before, and she ended up going to a mental health facility called Copper Springs in Gilbert because she was so full of anxiety, depressed, and just very concerned about her future. And so she was there for a few days, but left there on Wednesday, maybe June 1st or 2nd. So she spent a couple days there. She got out on Wednesday, immediately started trying to find Dash, and then
What was she doing to try and find Dash? Just
well, she was
networking in the horse community, I would assume?
yes, and she was driving around to different areas that she knew, talking to different people that also knew Dash, just spending a lot of time out in that area in Queen Creek and Santan, kind of looking for her and networking and posting all kinds of things on social media. And then when she wasn't doing that, she was moving some of her belongings to the apartment.
Because they were over in your garage.
Yes.
Okay.
And she spent Thursday night in the apartment and Friday, and then that's when she was killed.
Okay. Now, can you tell me when the last time that you spoke to Rachel was?
It was Friday evening. In Indiana, it was 3 hours later. So for her, it would have been about 9 o'clock in the evening. And we had talked back and forth. And at about midnight, I said, I have to go to bed, sweetheart, because I'm going to be up early with our grandkids were 4 and 6 at the time.
Midnight Indiana time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So for here in Arizona, for Rachel, it was 9 o'clock, and she just said she felt so much safer being close to home, was thankful to be back in the apartment, and couldn't wait to see me on Monday.
Okay. And that would have been June 3rd.
Yes. Yes.
So at about 9 o'clock on June 3rd was the last contact that you had with her.
Right.
What about her fiance or other family and friends? Did anyone have any contact with her after 9 o'clock?
Only her fiance, Jomet. He had been at the apartment with her, helping her move some things in. She had told me when I was talking to her that they had dinner, they were swimming, and then they were going to watch a movie. And so he was there, but he had to leave about midnight because he helped his dad with a landscaping business. And he had to be up at 4:30 or 5 to start the landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
So he left at midnight.
Okay. And as we know, I mean, we've got this is still an active investigation. It's been active for the last 2 years. We have limited information from the police department as to what has yet been done. But what we do have are some of the call-out documents. These are known as CAD reports from the time that Rachel called 911. According to the report, she called in at about 2:07 in the morning on the morning of June 4th. So that would have been, based on this timeline that we're discussing, about 2 hours after her fiance left. And from other news reports, and I have not heard the 911 calls, and I don't believe that you have either.
No.
But there have been reports saying that, do you know what the reports said about what she said to the 911 operators?
What we were told was, she said, "I've been shot by somebody I don't know." But like you said, I haven't heard it either, so I don't know. And then looking at this does not correlate with those words. So I honestly don't know. And I feel like I should say it absolutely implicates her fiance in ways. And I understand that, but I want to add that he is a very vital part of our family. We have taken him in and treat him like a son.
Still to this day.
To this day. He's just very near and dear to us. And even though I know that makes it look very suspicious on his part, we don't believe for a moment anywhere in our hearts that he had anything to do with it. The way he grieved afterwards, he wishes he'd been there, obviously, with her, and they probably both would have been killed, but he just didn't want to even go on with his life without her. So I know it looks terribly suspicious the way it turned out, but those were the circumstances. And this, I feel like I should also clarify this little part, that because there has been some question about this, and I have said at times that the door was kicked open, and in saying that, I meant the bedroom door was kicked open, because it was pulled shut because her two foster dogs were in there with her. But the front door, the door to the apartment, was unlocked. It was tragically left unlocked. And the reason is that as she was moving in, she knew there had been a lot of coming and going from that apartment and some very questionable drug activity. And many people might have had a key. And so she and Jomette changed the lock on the apartment that day on June 3rd, so that none of the previous people that might have had keys could get into the apartment. And unfortunately, the lock that they put on could only be locked from the inside of the apartment. It didn't have a key where you could go out and lock it from the outside. So when Jomette left, he woke her up and said, "I'm leaving, get up and lock the door." And she said, I will. No, I'm going to right now," or whatever. And so he went out and he walked down a little bit and listened, and she didn't get up and lock it. So he came back in and said, "Rachel, get up and lock the door behind me. I'm leaving." And I guess she never did. So that door was unlocked. Tragic.
And he has shared that story with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the police.
And so 2 hours later, she's on the phone with 911 saying that she has been shot, and reportedly from those that have heard the 911 by someone I don't know.
Yes, that's what we were told.
So that brings us to, clearly we've got an open case here, and we've got various scenarios that I'm sure that the police department that's looking at this has gone over. There are several groups of persons of interest or suspects, I guess you could call them at this point. There was obviously the dispute over the finances with Dash, and Rachel was in a panic over that, making statements on social media looking for her horse.
Right.
There was an attorney then brought in, sounds like pretty quickly.
Yes.
And so was that situation, I mean, it sounded like it was very stressful for her. I mean, if she's having a nervous breakdown.
Yes.
So that I would, if we listed those folks in one area, those would be the horse people, for lack of a better phrase. Right. Also, we don't know a lot about those who were subletting the apartment. And at least according to the other residents, there were comings and goings various times and suspicious activity, at least in their minds, right, about the amount of foot traffic through the complex.
Right, which is also referenced in the report.
Right. It's in the chronology that the Gilbert police turned over to us. In addition to that, in the report, there's a mention of an altercation that her fiance's dad had made some pretty violent statements.
Yes.
About, what was it, about 6 weeks prior?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I mean, we don't want to go into too much into the details, but just an overview of kind of what he said and what caused there to be an argument between them.
Well, I'm glad you don't want details because I don't have them. I really don't know a lot about it because I was not there. I just know that it happened at their home in Gilbert and it involved a car or some cars. And I don't know exactly what the exact confrontation was about, but he was very angry at Rachel, physically pulling her out of a car and yelling at her that if he saw her again, he would kill her. And I don't know, the police were called that night. They were present in this situation, and that's why it's on the report.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I know.
Okay. And this was put into the chronology report. It looks like at 2:17 in the morning when she called in at 2:07. So within 10 minutes of the initial 911 call, they had at least made the connection that there had been another altercation involving her name.
And a threat.
Right.
I take that as a threat. Yes, very suddenly. So I don't know.
Right.
I don't understand that.
And given that this is still an active investigation, the police department hasn't turned over everything in public records that they have collected. Mm-hmm. What have you received so far?
The chronology report.
The chronology.
Sadly, that is all that we have received. I don't understand why, but they were very slow in releasing the death certificate as well. We've only had that for a couple months. We've been asking for a year now, over a year, for the medical examiner's report. Mm-hmm. And we were told specifically that we could not have that because, quote, there's information in it that only the killer would know. Mm-hmm. And we even asked for a very redacted one. Take that you're referring to out so we can just have the ME report. We do not have that. We've asked for the police report. We can't have that. Even a redacted one. So I don't know, and I don't understand why some of these things are being held for so long. Mm-hmm. The only other thing I have is from the hospital where she was taken, because I requested all the records from there, and it took 4 separate requests to get the full records, but I wanted absolutely everything because that's just, I needed to process that as a mom. I wanted to know when she got there, what they did in transport, and everything they went through to try and save her life. So I just needed to know all that information. And I would also do the same thing with the police report. Like, I would like to know exactly what transpired that night and how it happened. So hopefully, if we keep asking, maybe one day we'll get it.
Right. And we've got a network of a lot of highly skilled forensic experts, other investigators, and myself that are trying to assist in your search for clues and for answers, and trying to see if there's anything else that we can do to get the public involved to provide leads and information. This case has been sent over to Silent Witness.
Yes.
And I believe that there is a reward for some information that has been posted. I think that's up to what, $7,000 right now.
Yeah.
What is it that you're hoping that the community that hears this will do to help solve this case?
Well, the primary thing that anyone in this community or any other could do is share any information that they know they might have heard. I just have to believe that somebody somewhere knows something about this. I don't believe it was a random act. I think it was planned somehow. And I think at some point somebody's going to talk about it somehow. So I would just ask that anybody that has anything to share about that night, the area, if they saw anything, they met somebody somewhere that was talking about this, anything, that would be the most help. And then we did create a GoFundMe account to help raise funds to pay for anything that we need to help solve this case. Any, I don't know,
Right.
forensic testing or what, I don't know what all the things are, but just so that we have funds available to answer more questions and leads as hopefully they come in.
Right. Yeah, and you and I spoke about that a couple of days ago, that sometimes there's different folks that might be able to lend some assistance to the investigation, that may need to be hired. So, folks' donations would help in that regard. We're obviously not, we're doing this as a pro bono case, and as are the other investigators that have been helping with the case. And, we honestly just want answers for you and for the community, and, justice for Rachel.
Thank you so much.
So, this is going to be obviously an ongoing discussion because it is still an active case. We'd like to have some conversations with the Gilbert Police, with the prosecutor's office, and see if we can get more insight and engage our community and help resolve this issue together.
Right.
I've always felt that investigations in a vacuum don't work as well as investigations that involve other people that have the same goal.
Right.
We've seen our community come together and help kids in need and help families that have gone through horrible tragedies to bring their abusers and their attackers to justice. And that's the same that we hope for Rachel.
Thank you.
And I know that it's a small consolation to get results in a case like this, because I'm sure that all you want is to have your precious daughter back.
But it also helps. Obviously, that's what we want, but that's not going to happen. Her life was taken. But it does help to know, it would help in the healing process to understand what happened and why it happened, and just to be able to try to continue to live life without her. to understand why she's not here. That would be helpful. Yeah.
Well, we're hoping we hope that the truth can come out in this, and that we can get some sort of peace or resolution for your family.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
You too.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in to Truth Be Found. Keep the pursuit alive and subscribe to the realm of high-profile investigations as each secret edges us closer to the truth. Until next time, stay vigilant.